Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nazira, and I'll be your MC and host for today. So to those who are in the auditorium right now, and to those who are online, thank you so much for being here together with us this evening. So to share a little bit about the HEAD Foundation Dialogues, it is a platform for us to discuss salient issues in education, healthcare, human capital, and leadership development. So for today's session in particular, it's about financial literacy. So financial literacy is an issue that we often have a lot of questions about. How do we approach the topic? When do we approach the topic? And how do we actually complete it? So today we have Reggie Koh from the Financial Coconut. Just to take note that all that is discussed in this session is our opinions. I mean, does not represent the HEAD Foundation, nor Reggie. It's just a discussion for us to share our thoughts. So feel free to ask your questions, both online as well as in person. So Reggie, let me just share a little bit about the Financial Coconut. It's Singapore's first personal finance podcast. So when he gave me the background about the Financial Coconut, he came up with it at his dinner table in 2019. So it's quite interesting. And it has grown to reach out to millions of people. There's billions of downloads across a lot of platforms, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. And he has also produced many other successful shows for corporate giants like OCBC, HubSpot, Aspire. So I think at this point I should stop talking. I'll pass the time now to Reggie. He's gonna share a little bit more about what he's going to talk about today.
Okay, great. Well and good. So just a show of hands. Just want to get some like barometer here in the room. Any one of you have heard the podcast, The Financial Coconut? Oh, great. Got listener. Okay, for all of you that don't know, you can always check out the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, right? Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, wherever, right? So The Financial Coconut. No need to listen to my short story because you will get a lot of information on the podcast itself, right? So today, I think we're going to talk a little bit about financial planning, right? A bit big for me to say actually financial planning, right? Because I feel that out there's just a lot of product information. There's no thought, there's limited thought process being shared around, right? So it's not about me today, it's more about you tuning in. So if you have any specific questions, please drop them. We will address it at the later part of the dialogue, okay? Okay, so we're gonna start. So I think the main goal for most people is retiring, right? So when we're talking about financial planning, let us just anchor on a topic itself, right? Because you can plan for anything. You can plan for your wedding, you can plan for your house, you can plan for many other things that you're going for, right? But I think retirement, so far, given the data that we have on the consumption patterns of listeners, retirement is one of the biggest things. So I'm going to use retirement as an example to try to let you get a little bit of idea into how I think about this thing, right? So provide you a framework of thought. Okay, so I think retirement is a process of change, right? Essentially, there are two parts to this, or at least in my head, there are two parts to this. One is an existential challenge. The other is a financial challenge, right? Why do I think we need to have some clarity about these two parts? Because I don't want you to convolute your solutions from one to the other. A lot of times you feel like, I'm done with this. Where do I go next? You're not very clear, and then you end up maybe getting sold a product or another. In actuality, what you need is to go and discover yourself, try to find the next thing to go into, right? Rather than a product. You don't really need a product for existential crisis. At least that's my thought. You need more time to engage in a different way of life, okay? Which is not where we are going to touch on today. I just want that clarity amongst all of us, okay? Of course, the other part is the financial part, which I'm sure you are not new to this. 101 people out there telling you do this, do that, how to do this, how to do that, right? So this is not foreign, but I'm gonna share with you how I think about it. And to share with you how I think about it, I'm gonna assume a few things, right? As with all models, there are assumptions. Okay, so assumptions must be laid out clear. Yeah? So I see the dad down there smiling because he can't wait for the kid to grow up, right? And not my problem anymore, which is a real challenge for a lot of young parents today. So that's an important discussion. But I'm going to assume a few things as I share with you how I think about retirement. So I'm going to assume your kids have grown up, they have their own life, you have no more dependents under you, okay? Which means that you don't need to care about them, your sole focus is yourself. The second thing I'm going to assume is you have gotten your medical support system sorted. Okay, medical support system would mean like your integrated shield plans, your critical illness plans, and whatever plans that you have somehow bought or another. Okay, essentially, this thing, the private plans and along with the public infrastructure should cover the uncertainty in your medical bills. Okay, so we will put this aside when we are planning for retirement. At the end, we can always round the number back and integrate it into your overall plan. Okay, but we must assume some stuff to make this discussion easy. So medical aside first. Okay, so how I think about retirement, if you got no dependents and your medical plan is sorted, is 3 levels. Okay, and this can be separated into another context. Let's say it's housing. It could be what is the minimum that you want to live with? You know, what do you aspire to live with? And what do you want to leave for your next generation? Okay, so you can always contextualize to different goals that you're going for. Let's say my goal, send the kid to NUS. That is the basic level I must meet. If can, then we send to foreign, you know, or something like that. So there are certain levels that I think all of you should plan alongside. Your targets must be tiered. Right, so when you tier them, it's a lot more comforting, and I think from a psychological and even a mathematical standpoint, right, it is much more achievable. Right, so back to the context of retirement planning, I think the first level is how much do you need to live. Okay, so this is the basic level, yeah. Second level is the life you would love to live, right? So weekend jalan-jalan, go holiday once a year, do all the stuff, right? I think everybody would kind of love that. Right, so that is what you love to live. And then the last one in my head is what do you want to leave, right, for your next generation, right? So what do you want to give them? So how much do you need to live, okay, in the context of retirement? This is a survey, right? And I think it's on what'senough.sg. You can check them out. I think it's quite a comprehensive research. Okay, I don't think it's a survey. Let me correct myself. Right? It's a research. They went all the way to amortized a curtain, right? So for context, right, essentially they amortized the curtain for 30 years, which means today you buy the curtain, they average that the curtain can last 30 years. So if the curtain is $100 today, in 30 years time, every day actually you only spend how many cents? Okay, so these guys are quite crazy. Okay, what's enough.sg? Go and check out the website. They have very detailed breakdown. They even have like, 1 week 2 apeng. You know, it's very crazy, right? I love it. I have read through all their documents. You know, I think they provide a decent evaluation. And of course, based on that, you can always adjust to yourself, right? But use them as a platform, what'senough.sg. And their evaluation is about 1,400 today, okay, or 2021. So you adjust for inflation now, maybe a bit higher. No, definitely a bit higher. As to how much, I'm not sure. Okay, so that is the idea. Check out what'senough.sg. I think they have that there. So, of course, within that whole research that they've done, then these are the core things, right? Utilities, you know, cleanliness, basic entertainment, you know, lodging, food, those things are all there, right? And I do think all of these are basic things that you need to live, right? So what is important is what I recommend everybody to do is to go and track your expenses and do it line by line item. Don't lazy, okay? Right? Because because the line by line item will give you that clarity, and you probably only need to do it once or twice. Okay, so track the line by line item, how much you actually need. You'll be surprised the breakdown is much lesser. Usually when people come to me and they tell me, oh, you know, I need to plan for $5,000 or $10,000 a month consumption, you know, as a basic level of retirement, right? Then I'll be like, I doubt you've done this, right? And this is not very healthy because it kind of inflates the problem in your head, right? And when it inflates the problem, then it creates a lot of unnecessary anxiety, right? So what I think for more people to do is to go and track the line by line item, and you can use the what'senough.sg as a reference towards tracking your line by line item. Okay, but one thing important for the line by line item when you're planning for your retirement, I think I did a whole podcast around this, the cost of work. Right, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, once you retire, maybe there are some, I think there are some retirees here. Maybe you can give us some context, right? Like you don't travel as much, you know, or you don't need to like wear very fancy full shirt to show a particular persona in your life, right? So I think there's a lot of things that are entrenched within the course of work that can be removed. The latest gadgets, the entertainment budget that sometimes have to come out of your pocket, the kind of styling that you need to have to fulfill the job that you are going for. A lot of these things can go, right? And when millennials are planning their finances for retirement, I think you need to be clear based on these line items, they can all go. Okay, so, and that is not to say that we are trying to press it to the lowest, to plan for the most basic, okay? But we must go there first, right? So when we remove all these things, we get the most minimal number that we can go with. Then from there, we can build it up. Okay, so I think that is a clearer way to go about doing this. So to me, that will give you your magic number, whatever it is in your own context. And then from there, you plan for that. Okay, and the standard assumptions of all the planning structures are there already. Most people will just want to know how much you need to retire with. And you give them a number, everything will come out. Right? So there are a lot of models there already. Right? So this is what I think the number is the one that's a bit ambiguous and you need to work with it. Okay. So then what else do you need to, so this is a question, right, to ask yourself. So based on that, that's the most basic, right? What you need to live with, very, very minimal. Okay. And then, then of course, wait. Oh, keep pressing, it's only forward, huh? Okay. Yeah. So then the next tier is what is the life you would love to live with, right? And then you start to add other things like, okay, 1 year travel, 1 time, 2 times. And all these can vary massively from a person to another, right? And that is up to you to make your decisions. Okay. But the thought process is there. Okay. Then the third level is what do you want to leave behind, right? Essentially, I think this is the part that is a bit troubling when I talk to a lot of people because it is the front and center of a lot of people's financial planning when they're planning for retirement, which I think it should be the last, right? Because if you cannot take care of yourself first, you put in all these resources into planning for your next generation, and then when you struggle through your lifetime, you're going to affect the next generation in one way or another, and it may make it worse, right? Because a lot of financial agents, they will come to you and then they will ask you how much you want to leave for your next generation. They do estate planning, they do all these things, right? Which I don't think is a bad thing. Right, but what is the priority? Right, so to me, this is the third level. For people that can do estate planning, for people that can do financial planning at this stage, on some level, you're quite lucky already. Right, that means you have a lot left, behind that you can plan with this. But I do not think this should be the center of your planning at the start. Right, your center of your planning should be how much you need to live, and then the life you love, and then whatever you want to leave behind, then this is the last thing, at least in my psyche of thought, okay? And just to add a little bit of color in this, I think the idea of equal sharing for your next generation is a bit problematic because your kid maybe don't want your house, they got a house. You give them another house, they got to pay extra tax. Maybe they don't want that, right? Maybe they just want your watch collection, right? Or maybe they want something else from you, right? I think this is a part that maybe in Asian sentiments, there's a lot of like must equal, must fair. But why not just go and ask, your next generation, like, hey, actually, what do you want from me? And you can actually plan a little bit of that passing down earlier rather than all the way until your passing. Right? I think that could kind of help the transition for the family, because if you think about it, if your kid suddenly overnight takes on your whole estate, what's going to happen? Right? Do they have the abilities and the understanding to manage it? Is it going to suddenly affect their quality of life? Right, so I would think equal sharing is something that you really got to question. Give the people what they want. So give your kids what they want, and then also maybe kind of phase in that whole thing. Right, so these are just some thoughts that I talk about on the podcast, just to give you some color of like where are we in our thought processes. Okay. Yeah. So essentially, how I look at this, how much you need to live, you want high levels of certainty. Right? Because that is your baseline that you need to live with. So I think CPF Life, some of the older generations have pension plans, and the younger generations can practice annuity, right? Which essentially is CPF Life, and the public sense, and the private sense, there are private annuities out there, right? So to me, you need high level of certainty for this. Don't play around with them. Okay, so that is how I would think about it. And I think CPF Life, ever since the introduction of it, has been quite a good plan out there, right? But you don't hear it as much because there is no money to be made, right? So there's no money to be made in the private sector, so they will not market it. but I think CPF Life is something that more people can explore. Okay, of course. Then, if you want the life you love, then you must be a bit more aggressive, right? Like you want to let the money work a bit harder, give you the extra, right? So I think those things come to investments, which is a big investment bucket, right? And there's all sorts of discussions there. You can check out the podcast, right? If not, we can have a more specific discussion after this. Now, of course, the last one is what do you want to leave behind? It's like wills, trust, estates. Those are the different tools that are more prevalent out there. Okay. If you have any specific question, we'll come to that. Yeah. And yeah, I just want to give a shout out for CPF Life, right? So, the CPF Life payout is really not that bad, at this point in time. And I do believe that if you take the escalating plan, there is a 2% factoring for inflation, right? So, but for your specific, please go to Ask CPF. CPF has a calculator on their website, but if you want a lot more comforting assurance, you can go straight down to the office, right, and talk to them, like what is it specific for you. And for a lot of people, I think some people have their HDB, they may want to sell the lease at the back, which are some of these lease buyback scheme, right, is slowly coming out. It's all a viable plan that you should explore. Okay, and don't be afraid, regardless of your political leanings. Yeah, I think like the public infrastructure is for everyone. You should go and ask about it. Okay, and then if you think after you max out the public infrastructure, or after you establish some level of plan with the public infrastructure like CPF Life, and it's not enough, okay, the private ones you can go and explore. Right? I think that's how I think about it. Okay, and let's be clear, a lot of public goods are indeed the best in class. Right? It's one of the cheapest out there. It gives you the best. Integrated Shield Plan, CPF Life, please check them out. Okay, but they don't sponsor, so very hard to keep selling them. But whenever I got a chance, I will share about them. Okay? So yeah. Then of course, investment, broadly diversified, low cost. You don't need me to talk about it. If you got specific question, we can talk. Okay. Then we round everything back to managing the risk factors, right? So the risk factors, like I said, integrated shield plan, critical illness, term life. I think these are the main products that are kind of out there that would really kind of get your plan together, right? Okay. I think that's it. Yeah. So thanks for listening to my very short sharing, and I hope this is our vision, right? Inspiring you to live a life while managing your finances well. If you want to check out more, please check out Spotify, Apple, wherever you are. Great.
Thank you, Reggie. So, all right. While we have questions coming in from Zoom, does anybody in the room have any questions? Oh, okay. My boss has
got
a
question.
But need microphone now.
Thank you, Reggie. Changda from the Head Foundation. A lot of the work of the Head Foundation evolved around education.
Yes.
And I think we will be very interested to listen from you a little bit. What would be the kind of advice? I mean, you used retirement planning as the example that you spoke about. If today, imagine we have a different crowd of high school students, university students, what would be your advice on financial planning for them? And what would be some of the insights that these young people probably needs to pick up when they are still in schools and in universities?
Okay, so most of my audience are millennials, right? They work very hard already, right? They got some money sitting around, so they will think of money, right? And I have observed this consistent pattern across the other platforms. So we are all friends, so I talk to all of them. Most people that tune into personal finance content are millennials, okay? And older. The assumption is you got money, then you care about money, right? So that is the assumption. And they are the active listener because they want to know what's the latest, what's happening, what's out there, what are the newest products, what do you have, right? So those are the people that are there. For a lot of younger generation, I think it's more aspirational, right? It's a lot more about the basics of personal finance, which we usually will go back down to things like budgeting, understanding income and expenses, get your balance sheet together. Those things sound very lame to us, when we talk about it. It's like, but if we contextualize to the young generation, actually, that's a great place to start, right? Kind of know where you are, what are the systems out there, like things like CPF, right, or HDB, or, because if we go into very complex things like how the insurance policies are structured, those can go very, very complex. It's a bit too simple in how it's being sold. Actually, the product itself is very complicated, right? So for a lot of younger people, I think budgeting, getting them familiar, kind of working through the mindset of like what is money, giving them some framework to work with. There's no universal definition, right? In that sense, but giving people some framework to work with that, I think that's a good place to start. Right? And if they have surpluses, and then all the other things start to come in, right? Investing, all these things, all built on the idea of surplus. So if you cannot sort out the budgeting, which is the first part, such that you can have surplus, all other things are not important, right? So I think that is a endless tussle between how to educate the next generation, right? It's like, should we teach them investing? Should we teach them about insurance? So many other things, which is great, and they will pick up. They have time, right? But first, do you have surplus? No surplus, no talk, right? So I think that's a fundamental basis that I will go with. Yeah, at least based on what I've accumulated over the years. Yes.
That's pretty interesting. I think for my age specifically, I'm only like 20 something, approaching my big 3. I don't really think about retirement that much. I'm still in the process of growth.
You're still happy, you're still high.
Yeah, still happy. So, and I don't have kids.
Yeah.
So this is something that I don't really consider, especially we have one in the room right now, learning more about financial. But for me specifically, if I am starting out my career, and do I have to look towards retirement right now, or still gaining the power to earn more money?
I think you're gonna try to earn more money. You're gonna try to move up the corporate ladder. You're gonna try to maximize, invest in something or somewhere, right? You're probably gonna do some of that, right? At least at this point in time, right? I recommend people to think about retirement once you kind of got your life together, because you retire into something, right? If you don't even like your life, what are you planning for? Right? So if you are still in a mess, figuring out like, oh, is this the career I want? Is this where I am? I think the bell that rung in my head was when a day I was like, yeah, I quite like this life. Let me plan to protect this life, right? Such that I can consistently hit it, right? At least that's kind of how I look at it, at least for my 30s, type of situation. Yeah, only much later then we can talk about other things. But at this stage, I think it's all about maximization. Trying to go more gung-ho. Right.
Okay, then the next question that I have, or maybe some of the questions that we have.
It's okay, you can
online,
ask. You are the host, you get privilege.
Okay,
yes.
But you see, what you're saying, I see in my mind is like a steady growth. But let's say I want to take up debt. I want to study more. How much debt should I take in order for me to grow my finances so that I can retire comfortably?
Okay, I think debt is the wrong question. The right question is surplus. How much surplus do you want to gather? Because you want to be able to fire your boss. I know that's not very nice to say when the boss is there. Okay? But you want to reach a position where you can say, boss, you're very annoying. I really don't like you. Bye. Right? And you can comfortably walk away and know that within the next 1 to 2 years, you are fine. Even if you burn through your savings, you are fine. Right? And I think for a lot of young people, that is the thing to focus on. Not how to optimize your credit card, not how much debt to take. All those things is what the industry wants you to focus on. Right? What you really need to focus on is how much surplus you're going to accumulate in the next 3 years, especially in the first, decade of your life when you are maybe changing a career, changing a sector altogether, right? And I have no qualms with people jumping around 6 months here and suddenly you 6 months at another sector because you need to try, right? At some point you find the stability, then you talk about other things like, oh, now that I'm stable, I got something going, can I take on debt to double down on that? Right? So if after I try a few things, I say, hey, I like this. I wasn't a psychology major, but after I try a few, I find that this is great. Can I do a degree here, or can I do a master's, right? Across industry, right? Then here we talk about doubling down with the debt. Yeah, rather than the other way, right? Because everybody is talking about this, and I don't really like the discussion. I feel it should be how much surplus you're gonna get in the period of time that you work, such that you have the power to say no. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Do you all have any questions so far?
Yes.
Yes, Vignesh.
Yes. Excuse me. So I've got a sort of 2-part question, but I think you've kind of answered my first part, which is the economic model that we are used to right now is changing very rapidly. And for many of us, we came from a generation where your university or your tertiary education was what saw you through your career. Now, of course, that's changing, and many of us have to constantly cycle through qualifications and things like that, and that costs a lot. Yes, the government in Singapore has been very generous with things like I should know the name of this program.
SkillsFuture, is it?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
of the 𝗙𝗂𝘁𝘂𝘁, but at the same time, there is still quite a significant cost that has to be borne and where debt could potentially come into play, because the decision to shift careers oftentimes has to be very strategic and very timely. If you miss that boat, if there's a particular industry which is rising and you miss that boat, you may not be able to do. So waiting for the surplus to build up may not be the right time. So that's one. The second question also is, as the economy and economic model is changing, should our view of retirement change, right? A generation ago, I mean, my parents, I'm probably around your age, I just look a lot older, but a generation ago, like people like our parents, you knew, okay, you work in this particular field for, 30, 35, 40 years, you hit 65, you hit 70, you retire, you enjoy life, you look after your grandkids, and, you live off passive income, right? And your CPF and all that. But it's changing, right? Most of us today, especially in the Singapore context, are professionals. One way or the other, we have skills that would oftentimes become more valuable with the more experience we gain. So is the view of retirement something that we should change? That we're not really saving towards retirement, but it's this idea of giving us options, right? The whole idea of building this pool is about options, because the chances are we will still find forms of employment and income even in our later years. So I'm not sure if this is a comment or a question. I've just dragged on.
No. I understand that is a very valid question, and I will say that is a middle class problem, right? So we must be clear. Yeah? So if you are doing fine and you want to kind of like take a sabbatical, very popular these days. Huh? I start to see a lot of people take a sabbatical, which is great. At least I'm from the view that if you're financially fine and you've already slogged for 15 years in a corporate ladder, you want to take 1 year off, please go. The truth is you will never be the same age ever, right? So your body will never be as optimal as before, right? Or at least that's my hot take, okay? So I feel like if the whole idea of working all the way and then retiring is not sexy anymore, you can always try to take a break in the middle, right? And a year, 2 years probably will not affect you that much, right? So at least that's my view, okay? So I think that is perfectly fine. But the other part about will it affect your corporate trajectory, right? That part, or there's a different sector, things are changing. How do you play around that? Okay, so I think for 𝗙𝗂𝘁𝘂𝘁, I have a bit of comment, right? So for big MNCs, right, you got no problem. If you join a big MNC, right, they will invest in you, right? So they have a lot of programs. Every other week, I hear people go for this program, that course, that thing. They will double down. They stack their capital on you, hoping that you can provide more productivity. So there's no problem. It's a lot of the SMEs that will struggle. Like I run a very small outfit. I really struggle to like invest in my guys to, hey, there's this latest VR course. You want to go or not? There's that. It's very hard, right? Because I really don't have that kind of numbers. So when 𝗙𝗂𝘁𝘂𝘁𝘂𝘁 come, right, I think it's really to cover more of that, and also some extra baking class, if you want. Say, hey, it's great, please go and learn. Okay, baking, all that, can save a lot of money, one. Okay, so that is that. I feel like one thing that a lot of people don't have for some reason, especially working professionals, is a great headhunter friend. Okay, there are a lot of agents that you dislike, right? But headhunter has an incentive structure that's tied to you, because they make the commission based on how high they can sell you at. Okay, yeah, right. Because if they sell you as high as possible, they get the most, right? So and headhunters, right, are like knee deep in what is happening in the job market. So all of you should have a headhunter friend, right? Especially if you are a working professional, right? That means you're not like run of the mill, one of the many. And if you are, then you should try to get into a space where the headhunter will actually want to talk to you, right? And they will tell you what is happening, what is out there. They have the first-hand information. No amount of article reading will beat them. Day in, day out, they are breeding the job market. So they know what's happening. So that is the best hack. Go with the headhunter, they will sell you at the highest price. And 3 months later, they can sell you again. Yeah, so they sell you here 3 months. 3 months later, you're unhappy, you want to go, they can sell you again. And they will get the commission again. So they are highly incentivized to sell you. What with a headhunter?
Okay, so if anybody has any headhunter friends, please forward them the Head Foundation YouTube and website.
Drop the contact here.
Drop contact, then we'll invite you to a networking session. Okay, so everyone's invited. Okay, all right. So there are some questions coming from online. Okay, Sandra says, what would your financial advice for a 40-plus-year-old with a young child would be? And okay, maybe I'll add on to another question that we received previously. Single parent financial management. How about that? And
Okay.
maybe plus a third one, housewife.
Okay, this is hard. Okay, so single parent is a social structure situation. right? Because the social structure is not as supportive. I think it has changed, right? I don't know the exact specifics, but from my sensing, I think that has changed, right? And you will start to see a little bit more of that, right? So that is that. Parents, right? I think the biggest struggle with parents is they want to give the best, right? And they will squeeze themselves to give their kids, right? And to me, that is a bit risky, because if you are the tree at home and you burn, what do you think will happen to the kid? Nobody is going to cover them, right? So I think you must take care of yourself first. You can tarik a bit on like your kids, and I think a lot of people is also like, like safari like that, go down, play, everything. We also grew up like that. It can be done. And the system is not that fragile to a point where everything needs to private. Like to be clear, I think a lot of our neighbors have a lot of private education system because the public structure is not as strong. That is a reality. You can debate me about that, right? So for a lot of our parents, the young parents, especially people that are thinking like that, because the very underpinning question here is, do I plan for my retirement or do I invest my kids? That means I got limited X, right? This is if there's a surplus, this question does not exist, right? So it's this or the other. I would think you must take care of yourself first. Okay, kids we do our best. We do our best. And always remember, if we collapse, the whole family die. Right? So we must take care of ourselves. This is my basis. And I think the government not say recently, has a lot of those kind of matching grant. You should max out if you can. Right? Like the early child, the kids one, right? There's a kids grant that there are a few components that everybody get, and then there's one component that's matching, right? You should top it up, everything. And if you have elderly at home that for some reason, because of the generation, they didn't work, then government also give you matching, top it up. Because if you think about it, $1 into the CPF, they give you another dollar, that's $2. So that is the 9% return on 4.5%, right? 4.5% is a special interest, the special account, right? Right. So $1 into that ama that is like 70 years old, 80 years old, that on some level is pseudo dependent on the 40-year-old middle income, right? There's a matching. And it's very hard to beat 9% in the market. So take it and go. Yeah, but it's only $800 max lah. If not, everybody will start topping up. Okay, so but if go for it. Yeah, that is what I think for a lot of about 40 middle income, stuck in the middle type people. Yeah, take what you have and double down. And for housewives, okay, if let's say housewives pre-retiring, and your husband is a work in a professional one, there are a lot of like that, right? Husband work professional, that's why you can afford to be a housewife, right? So after many years, your husband's CPF very gao, right? Like a lot, right? A lot of CPF, but you don't have transfer. At least meet the basic 60,000. Right, I think the basic 60,000 has a 5.5%, or was it 6.5% on the RA, on the retirement account. Okay, so that is a simple take you should take, the first 60,000. Yeah, and then I think based on the CPF life structure, you can get 400-500 a month based on that once you hit 75. Yeah, so it's simple things to do lah. And then all the investing chim one, that one you talk to your financial advisor, or that one need to be more specific, the discussion based on the context. But these are the simple stuff.
Okay, so since we are really talking a lot about CPF, which is one of the very stable instruments in the market right now, and forever, I think.
You say one, huh?
Yeah, I say no lah. Actually, everyone, most of us have CPF.
To be fair, nobody wants CPF to be problematic. Nobody in this room wants CPF to be problem, and none of you want any problem to happen to CPF, right? Yes. CPF should be like, you should feel the statue there, very heavy one.
I don't know. I haven't reached that stage yet.
Okay. It's okay. You will listen to the financial coconut, you get more ideas.
Yes, please listen. Okay, so but talking about CPF, what about those who are self-employed? So we have a question coming from Amanda. She says, any thoughts about self-employed people whose work is irregular but might want to continue a level of interesting but not necessarily well-paid work beyond retirement age?
Okay. Independent worker, right, is getting quite common these days, like especially creatives. Like a lot of my friends, they're creatives, independent worker, or like agents, independent worker, right? So I think we must be clear, right? For the agents, they already have some sort of a structure there in terms of pseudo-employment, right? There's a structure that kind of manages them. But for a lot of freelance creatives, which I think that is where the question is coming from, register a company, right? Try to make yourself more professional in that sense, because bigger clients want to know that you have an entity. If not, they don't want to work with you, right? So this is one thing. And then if you can treat yourself, if you set up an entity, treat yourself like an employee of your own company. That's what I do. Okay, so essentially, instead of running TFC as an independent freelance, I set up an entity and then I am hired by my company. So I top up CPF, my company top up CPF for me also. Okay, and from there, the government treat you as, oh, your company hire one headcount, a lot of grants will come to you. Yeah, it is true because you want to promote employment. Whereas if you are a freelancer, you're in the gray economy, right? It's not very well tracked. People don't really know, so you say, I say, how the government going to support you, right? So if you can register an entity, employ yourself. Yeah, that is what I think. Of course, not immediate. If you're unsure about whether you have a market, take some time, figure out the market, right? Because I know some people draw eraser, make 10,000 a month, right? They came on my show before. So they designed the eraser. I was like, 10,000 a month? Yeah, because people find it is an art. Okay, great. I'm not dissing art, but it's a thing. They found a market that is stable, income coming in. Okay, then you treat this like a business. You register and you hire yourself, and then from there you separate your finances from your company's finances, and then you invest and manage your money like a company at a company level. Yeah, so I think that's kind of how I will take it for freelancers if they can. I know it's different for like Grab drivers, or like agents. It's different. And there's no blanket solution. Yeah, and if you don't have that, then if you can top up your CPF, I think that's a great place to start. I know a lot of people feel like, top up, what is one way in one? Not wrong, it's one way in for a reason. Yeah, so I think if you can do it lah.
We have quite a lot of very, very deep discussion here. So perhaps you can take some questions from the room if there's any. Anybody has any questions? Nobody?
No specific questions? Okay.
No specific, okay. As we were getting the registrations, there are some questions that come in. Perhaps you mentioned there were 3 segments. One is to live, how much we need to live, how much to love our life, and also how much to leave for the next generation. So we have this question: how do we strategize our finances to have to love or to enjoy life?
So that one is not a financial problem. That one is your own problem, right? It's not a and I need to be clear, because the financial industry make everything a financial problem. But to be clear, this is your own problem. How many holiday you want to go? If you like Phuket, why you must go Europe, right? So it's up to you, right? So you must be clear. This is an existential problem. It's based upon the life that you love, what you think is enough. And to be clear, when I wasn't doing TFC is damn intense, okay? The amount of work that I gotta do just to run the financial coconut. Right? When I wasn't doing the financial coconut, I jalan everywhere. Backpack, holiday here, walk there. I don't need a lot of money, right? And I don't need a lot of very strong system to support me. But when I start doing this, I need to go like weekly massage lah. I need to do this lah, do that lah, just to keep me going, because I'm running at a much faster pace. And all those things vary. Right, so I used to laugh at people that go for like 3-day turnaround holiday. It's like, what you do? So stupid. Now I do it. It's because there's no time, and the reality of the system is as such. So this is an existential problem unique to you, right? So based on your own requirement, you set the life you love, right? And every time you make major shifts to the life you love, you must revisit your financial plan, right? Which usually comes with a marriage lah, comes with kids lah, comes with kids no longer under your care lah. All these are major things in life. Then you review your finances again. So how much do I really need? What do I want? So don't be too afraid of, like, everything now is a crisis, right? Existential crisis, everything is a crisis. But actually, you just don't know what you're doing, right? Can you like downplay the word, right? You're just not sure what you're doing. So take some time and review what you want to do. It's not a crisis. You're just lost. Right? And on some level, you must have achieved the thing previously to be lost, right? Because you already achieved already. That's why you lost. Like, what's next? Right? And that's a great place to be. right? So review it, take some time, don't need to rush to the next thing. Then when you define what's the life you love, then you manage your finances accordingly. So it is not a financial problem, it is an existential problem.
I feel a bit hurt now, but it's okay.
Why don't so personal? It's fine. Yes.
But it's okay. Well, on that note, because I feel hurt, right? What is one most common mistake in financial planning?
You sabo me, common mistake, convenience. Convenience is the most common mistake. You try to take the agent closest to you, right? The agent tell you, buy this product, can solve everything. People like 3-in-1, right? Or this plan got invest, got insurance, got everything, all pao ka liao, you love it. But you don't realize that all these pao ka liao things, right? Got a lot of wrapping fees in them. It's very expensive, right? So, not all package deal is a great deal, right? I feel like a lot of people a bit too lazy about it, and I'm quite amazed why people are lazy is not exactly the right word. I think afraid is the right word. Because you're afraid of it, you rather close your eyes and tell someone else, hey, I trust you like you do. And this is the thing that I think is a bit problematic, right? You must open your eyes even if you're afraid of it, but you don't need to go in immediately. You can shop around and take some time, right? You're not going to retire tomorrow, and if you retire tomorrow, you plan today, also be problematic, right? So you can take some time to go towards it. Yeah, shop around, ask around. Like, okay, your friend from company A, they got this like critical illness plan. Then because you trust your friend, you buy from their friend, right? Like, okay, support friend. Support friend got many ways, right? We can go and drink together, have fun together, do whatever together, right? There are many ways to support friend. Okay, but this is a financial commitment for 20, 30 years. I don't want to support my friend like that. Later end up my friend to support me, right? So I think what is important is if you believe that this product is what you want, right? Which is why today we talk about actually financial planning, right? Because a lot of people are just sharing with you product knowledge. It's not financial planning. There's no framework around it. But once you think of it like that, then you'll be like, hey, okay, so I need this product. You can go and shop for the product. Everybody will entertain you. You can put on LinkedIn or put on Instagram, hey, I need critical illness. You get 20 pings. I guarantee you. So, and then you go and compare. Oh, company A can give me this, company B can give me this, company C give me this, or maybe I already have a life insurance, then I can get a rider much cheaper for the critical illness, a lot of these kind of things. You must go and shop. Don't do convenient methods. Don't be so afraid. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's a great advice for someone like me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions in the room? Because right now, we are short of questions actually.
Wow. That is interesting.
I think everyone yes, Vignesh.
I think maybe building onto Reggie's point about shopping around. I think one big fear of shopping around is confusion, right? Oftentimes for many of us, we are good at what we do for a living, and many a times what we do for a living is not figuring out how to invest, right? For many of us, not in the sector. So we get confused and we think that these people, the same way, I guess in a professional sector, people come to us for advice on certain areas that we are experts on rather than trying to figure it out themselves. The same we sort of accord to other financial professionals. And on that vein, I want to ask, what are your opinions or thoughts on things like robo-investors? It seems to be something that's trending quite a fair bit. Do you see that as being a sort of safer way to shop around, an alternative?
Okay, buying a robot doesn't mean it's smarter than a human, right? Buying from a robot does not fundamentally mean it is better than a human. Okay, it may not be the right product that you want, right? So if you want a watermelon, if I sell you a coconut, take lah, because coconut, right? But the idea is you need to know what you want before you go there, right? But one thing about robots is they are cheaper. That is true, right? Generally they are cheaper. The fee structures that they have are cheaper. I know the human side of the sector is trying to catch up. So they're trying to change their comms plan. They're trying to do all those things. But I'm not sure have they caught up. At this point in time, the robots are still cheaper. Okay, and of course, a lot of people, the people that plan your finances as a human, they will tell you, oh, but I got touch point, human affinity, which is not wrong. Okay, because I think one of the biggest problem a lot of people face is when they create a plan but they don't follow, right? So the human touch point is valid. There's a valid argument for it, right? But at what cost? At what price? Is it 0.1% difference, or is it 0.5% difference? And all these fees, right, are compounded, right? Every year they charge you the fee, based upon your AUM, all that, and don't think it's linear. Do a simple calculation, it's quite a bit. Okay, so I think it doesn't mean that the robot is definitely better, because the robot also has assumptions at play. Validate the assumptions, right? But it's likely cheaper. Yeah, at this point in time. And don't be afraid. I understand. It's like when I first meet my first lawyer, it's like, very weird. Everything the lawyer say is true, because I'm empty. But after I meet the 10th lawyer, which I haven't, okay? If I meet 10 lawyers, it's quite problematic, right? Which I haven't. After a few, I kind of know where they go with this. What is their train of thought? You go and meet 10 financial professionals, they will tell you the same thing or similar. They have similar parameters that they will ask you, right? So after you shop around with 10, which I think you should, at least a few lah, then you get a general idea. And these days, information are a bit more prevalent. Right, you can look around, and see online. There are a lot of articles. Doesn't mean the articles are neutral. Articles also have sales incentives. Yeah, but when you go around, you get a few. So, everybody asks me about what's the lump sum I want to leave. Everybody asks me about how much I need a month. Everybody asks me about this. Everybody asks me the same. Eventually, you kind of know where are the parameters, right? I think that's a okay place to be. But yeah, I am also trying to solve this problem. How to think about it. Yeah. Build a framework for people. Yeah.
Okay, so all these are tools, and we need to just understand at what cost we are using these tools for.
Yes.
Is it? On that same note, okay, right now, since just now you mentioned the three things, like how much we have to live. So back to the how much we have to live. Some people treat their house as an investment. Now, to what extent should you treat it as an investment? Live in it for 5 years and after that sell it for a profit. I don't have a house. I'm still living with my parents, but until when? It's a good that is vital to us.
Okay, so is your house an investment, right? If you stay in it, it's not, right? You're not really making money out of it. Okay, so that is that. But you talk about the MOP, premium, right? Essentially, you can get a grant out, right? Once you sell, that is true, and it doesn't look like the government is planning to close that gap anytime soon. Okay, so maybe take it as a bonus for having kids lah, right? Like I give you the grant because you married already, right? Then you can priority to the married couples, right? If you're single, then don't have, right? So priority to having married couples, then that's the grant for you. 5 years later, you sell the flat, right? Better give me 2 kids. Something like that, right? But there is I don't think it is wrong to do it because the system is set up as such. People are milking the system of 5-year MOP sales to extract the grant. Can you really fault them? You cannot. It is the system. People are just maximizing their incentive structure. And then of course some people will say, hey, you don't take, you stupid. Maybe that's not. Okay. It's different people have their own choices, but it is prevalent as an idea, and I would say rightfully so, because the incentive structure is set up as such. Yeah.
Do you think that the Singapore market, we did receive this question, is inundated with a lot of property investment?
That one a bit big for me. It's complex. It's a very complex question because we're talking about the capital flow into Singapore. Singapore is a 2-track property market, right? Private market and public market. I think one of the bigger problems now is you start to see the public market move alongside the private market. Okay, I won't say start to lah. It has already been happening, but now, it's a bit much. So it's becoming less affordable. So it's a multifaceted question. It's not just about how much you can make out of the property market. It's whether is it livable, whether you can afford. And this whole discussion, right, makes no sense unless you are clear on where you are. Because if you don't have property, you think, wow, this is bad. But if you have property, like, not bad. Right? So right or wrong depends on your positions. right? But the first principles is a complex one, two-track property market, one that can allow international capital flow freely, the other controlled by the state, with a BTO structure set within it for 5 years, controlled supply. This is a very complicated system. I refuse to comment specifically whether is it good or bad or not. Yeah, but it depends on where you are. What is your position in the market? Then you will tell me go or not. Yes.
So in actual fact, what we really discover is that this financial planning is really unique to the individual. So you have to know what are your 3 tracks. So how much you need to live, how much you need to love, and how much you need to leave for the next generation. I think that's a very common theme throughout the entire conversation that we are having. And of course, when it comes to healthcare, right? So now, what is the sweet spot in terms of how much coverage we need to have?
Okay, healthcare is also a complicated one. So there are 3 types of insurance, okay? In my worldview, yeah, after I evaluate all the insurance, there are only 3 types. Okay, the first type is what I call X equals payout. Okay, that means if X happen, you get a payout. And usually the X is very well defined one. Cancer, what stage? Death, something happened, is very clear defined. X equals to payout. That is the structure. Of course, it will manifest in different products, life insurance, critical illness, but the main underlying structure is X equals payout. Okay, so that's the first structure. Second structure is what I call the claimable structure, which is the very complicated one. Okay, because that one is you go and spend first, then you claim back. Right, so you go to the hospital, you go for treatment, this medicine can claim or that thing can claim or this one very complicated. Most people only look at the main value because all the agents will tell you, this one can claim up to 1.5 million. You never ask them what can claim, what cannot claim, what is the composite within it, which hospital can, which hospital cannot. So those are the real things that you need to ask, not the number at the top, 1.5, 2. Few years later, there'll be 3, 4, 5. It will always happen because everybody want to outmaneuver the other. It's an arms race when it comes to the product, guys. Right? But what you really need is you go and find out like what is claimable within the structure. Right? So that one is a very, very complicated one. Okay? And then of course the third one when it comes to this kind of like insurance or financial products, right, is the I can't remember what is the one where you contribute and then you distribute at the end. So contribute and distribute. Okay, so there is usually a clear contribution process. Can be an endowment plan for X amount of years, or it can be whatever annuity program that you're going for. And then there's a distribution process, right? Maybe 10 years, how much you get. Like CPF Life is for forever, right? How much, right? So you must also be clear what's the contribution and what's the distribution plan, right? So based on what you're talking about, which is the medical side of things, right? The claimable structure is the one that there is no easy answer for it, okay? But consensus in the market is integrated shield plan is the cheapest. Okay, consensus in the market, integrated shield plan is because it's built on MediShield, and the government will not let the private guys make a lot of money out of it. Yeah, so integrated shield plan is the cheapest, but recently there has been changes to like cancer, right? Cancer drug list. There's some changes to that. So I stand corrected. Okay, it may no longer be the cheapest because you need to buy riders to claim some of those things. Yeah, and those things, right, it's best you talk to the product specialists, which are your agents. They will know it way better than I do, or even you, right? So I think that's where I will go with it. Yeah, so integrated shield plan, level 1, okay. You can explore critical illness, level 2. And then all the other pattern are the one on top. I feel like these are the 2 things at least. For most people, if you are broadly quite covered. Yeah. And in Singapore, actually, a lot of the more prevalent medicine, right, is very affordable. Right. And if you ask me, rather than thinking about what is the best insurance product, maybe you should top up your MediSave. Right. Because when I top up my MediSave, and then I use because MediSave has a 4% returns, 4.5% or 4, I can't remember exactly, 4% returns, and I use that return to pay the integrated shield plan. Right? So, and I think that's a great way. More people should do it. Right? You put out a capital up front, and then you let the capital roll within the CPF system, and then you use the MediSave to go and buy the integrated shield plan. So you no longer need to fork out more money. Right? And to be fair, you go to the hospital, you have to pay first. Either way, you got to pay first, right? So MediSave has to go out first. right? So I think that's a part that more people should do, rather than what insurance product are you topping up your MediSave, right? And if you top up your MediSave, it has that interest accumulation, which is quite decent, right? And from there, what can you buy with it? You can actually buy insurance with your MediSave, right? So I think that's the part that people can think about.
That's good when it comes to like as we approach coverage for retirement, as we grow older. Now, what happens when I'm already retiring? So what kind of coverage do I have?
You mean already retired?
Yeah, so let's say I'm already like 65, my own personal term insurance at 65, then all my kids all grow up already. So what kind of coverage do I have other than the payouts?
If you're already retired,
How do I plan?
your medical insurance is so expensive that I don't know what to say. Yeah, it's true. It makes no sense. Like, of course, from a statistical standpoint, the insurance premium will reflect your risk factors, right? Which is why the exponential curve at the back. A lot of people, when they buy insurance product, they only look at the front. First 5 years, first 10 years, how much? They never drag out the chart and see at the end, the curve is like that, right? So it's by the time you're at 65, 75, my God, thousands of dollars every year just to pay the insurance premium. I am sincerely unsure to give you an advice or give you an idea around it. Okay? And I feel like for more people, the thought process should be, while you're accumulating your income, manage that medical risk, right? But accumulate it such that at the later part of your like when you're entering retirement, right, 60 plus 70, right, you actually have the money, to service all these costs, right? Yeah. But there's no simple way around it. Yes, because it's just too expensive. I look at the numbers, I'm like, how to tell people what to do? Yeah.
Okay, perhaps that's more of a health risk, especially when it comes to medical bills.
Wait, I want to add on that.
Yes.
No amount of insurance is going to reduce your health risk. Please do not convolute that. Insurance only reduces the financial risk impact as a result of your kena something, right? You want to reduce your health risk, you go and for jalan 5 kilometer every day. Okay, that is the real reduction of the health risk. Go out downstairs. I know Active SG got a lot. Auntie downstairs dancing. I always laugh at them, very cute. But
it's free.
But 30 years later, I'll be like that. Right? It's fine, right? It's very nice. The community that is there, that is the real reduction of health risk. No amount of insurance buying is going to reduce the health risk, right? So if your concern is, what if I kena cancer? What if I get a 3 high? All those things, right? No amount of insurance is going to solve that. Go out for a while. Don't think so much. More stress, more problem, right? So understand, it is the physical things that you do that will manage the health risk. Insurance only solves the medical impact, okay? Which is valid also, but do not convolute them together. Okay? Yeah.
Other than the CPF payouts, I think I have 3 questions, which is financial security upon retirement. What is the most suitable financial plan for retiree? What specific features in financial planning for retirees? I think these 3 relate to retirement.
Okay, so this is very specific, right? I don't want to go into any products discussion, yeah. But I think these days low cost index funds is quite a lot more prevalent than previously. In the past, the broker don't want to pick up your phone, right? Because your numbers are not big enough, they don't entertain you. Because must call, right? So I rather I pick up from the millionaire than the guy that's going to give me $200, right? So this is true, right? And if you talk to the people in the financial sector now, they're in their 50s, 60s, right? They'll tell you back then when they were on the sell side, they call, but now no more such thing. Everything digital, right? So that is that. How I think about it is because the markets have changed, the products have moved alongside it. At this point in time, the consensus, I must be very clear, this is the consensus in the market, is that low-cost index funds are great investment products. Not because they outperform the market, not because they are like, woo, very amazing. It's just because by the virtue of them being very, very, very cheap, it translates that to a bit more profits for you. Right, so that is the retirement investment type of thing that I think more people should explore, especially amongst the older generation, and rather than pick single stock, because people can ask me how DBS, how this week, how Singtel, how next week, how, right? It's like relax, don't think like that, okay? But that doesn't mean you should sell Singtel, because some people, when they bought Singtel, was they must go queue at ATM on that era, right? The Singtel was so cheap, right? So it's different, cannot just think like that. When is your entrance point, what you're doing now is very specific to an individual. Okay, but at this point in time, if you don't have anything, right, I think low cost index funds is the industry standard today. Yeah, broadly diversified low cost index funds. Yeah.
Okay, I need to take note of that because I'm also looking towards new tools as a young adult. Now, when we talk about the third thread, which is legacy planning. Okay, so how much to leave for your next generation? We always talk about like individually how much should we leave, but can I plan with my family like how much to leave?
Okay, actually that is what I have been pushing for a while. Why don't you plan as a collective? The rich people do it. Why you cannot do it? Right? A lot of us we separate our pool. Like, oh, my money is my money, your money is your money. Is the fact of the matter is, with a bigger capital size, you have more options. Okay, if today you have a big capital in your bank, right, the banker will call you every other day. Right? So the fact of the matter is, with a bigger capital size, you have more options. So I have been pushing for people to manage as a collective. That means like parents together with the kids, if we can pull a sum together to manage. Of course, then there must be some structures involved lah, right? At what point, who can take what are the, all this must write down clearly. So this one will be more chim, right? And specific to the individual. But the base assumption is bigger capital, more options. So if you can manage as a collective, that is great. Rich people do it, why you don't? Yeah, so that is my thought process around that lah. Yeah, what was the earlier question?
I think it's more of that, like plan as a collective.
Yeah.
But can you like go deeper into why do we think that it is not accessible to us? No, it's rich people do it, but you mentioned we can do it too.
I am equally as puzzled as you. When I talk to, okay, but to be fair, I kind of understand because I don't have the best relationship with my family. So I can kind of understand why people think like that. Okay? But the math says, right, collect bigger together is better. But executing it is a different story because not everybody has the best relationship. Right? So that is very specific to the individual. And I will argue that there's a general tendency for more family friction if finances are not as well. Okay, so that's why maybe the rich people can do it. Right? But if you live in a broadly harmonious family, right, you don't need to be like the most excellent professional out there, but you have done your 30, 40 years of professional career, right? You have accumulated the sum. Actually, if you collectively manage with your kids, see whether they are comfortable. I do think it must be a top-down leadership. It's a bit hard bottom-up. It's not that impossible, it's a bit hard. But if you're comfortable managing your finances with your kids, actually you can do a lot more because you already accumulated. But the interesting thing is, a lot of retirees, right, want the kid to support them, but actually they already accumulate for 30, 40 years. So by right, if you look at it from a math standpoint, you have the millions. Your kid has like what, 5,000 bonus, right? You want them to support you. But actually, if we turn the thing around, can we structure it in a way that it becomes an ecosystem where the young ones will continue to contribute to this pool, but you as the person that's really accumulated, can you also provide them some sort of support in that process, right? So that everybody thrives together. This is a bit more complicated. It's a much longer discussion around it.
Perhaps we can take some questions from the room.
Oh,
yes. We have a gentleman here. The mic, please.
All right. So yeah, I'm Shafiq here, from a student from NTU. So I have a question. So throughout the journey of financial planning, there'll be phases or there'll be moments whereby there will be a crossroads. So for example, when someone is aged 55, they do have an option to withdraw some of their CPF until it reaches the retirement sum amount. But we all know that they could delay that withdrawal in order to earn a better interest, which allows a higher payout when they truly retire at 65. Because from what we see, when someone invests in the stock market, the nominal interest rate that they are expecting is 6 to 8%. So minus an inflation rate of 2%, it will be about 4%. And that you mentioned earlier, CPF can provide at times 4 to 6.
Not at times. This is what it
Yeah,
is.
so it's 4
Yeah.
to 6. So
Yes.
at times it could be better than what the stock market gives. So how can we raise awareness to people of age 55 to withdraw minimally in order to benefit the higher payout when they truly retire at 65?
This is difficult. You ask someone that believe. Okay, so this is the dichotomy of the problem, right? If CPF don't change, it will create more problems down the road. But as CPF keep changing, right, it reduces the trust of the people that trusted in the narrative previously. Okay, because if you sign up today you sign up, you see the plan of CPF Live, this is how it is. It's very clear, you go in. 30 years later, it's still this, right? Okay, very trustworthy. Trust is the basis of trust is consistency. Okay, not feely. Yeah. But if 5 years, 10 years into your career, oh, this one changed. But this was your plan. What's going to happen? Right? So I can totally understand why people of a certain generation or like different generation be like, hey, you keep changing, how? Right? So it is a very hard foray into the person's ability to trust, which is why I understand why a lot of people rather just take out the whole thing and manage themselves. Right? So this is where CPF need to put in the hard work. Right? Go and tell the people, actually, blah, 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 what we're trying to do, and that's the whole comms team. They're going to put in the work. Right? Because our consensus is nobody wants CPF to die. Right? We are all bound by it in one way or another. Right? So how does CPF go and build the trust? Yeah, with the people, I think that's that. And as for from a personal choice level, right, I think you can leave it to the individual to make the decision. Yeah, it's complicated. It's not a financial. I feel like it's not a financial. It's not a math problem, because the math says push back better, right? But this is not a math problem. It feels it's a more like personal choice, social trust struggle. It's a bit more complicated. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes, the gentleman. Oh, because the online people will need to hear.
For the benefit of the online people.
Testing. Okay, so just now, Reggie, you mentioned about having as a professional, you should have a headhunter in your team to help you get better jobs. And after 3 months, you don't like it, you ask a headhunter, hey, help me again, please. So with that, you have different professionals in your team to help you in this journey of life. So how would you identify, because there's now insurance agents, there are bankers trying to reach out to you, and now there are financial advisors. There's so many different titles they give themselves nowadays. How do you identify someone good to be on your team?
Okay, that's a good question. So like you said, right, there are a lot of people out there that's trying to get your money, right? Essentially, they want to be on your team. So how do you decide whether they should be on your team? I think a track record is quite important. Right? Of course, people will talk about all the iffy thing like moral values. Are we aligned? Do I feel good? Fair. Nobody wants to hang out with people that don't feel good. Right? Fair point. But track record, I think, is as brutal as it is a very important factor. So I will never give new financial planners a chance. Never. Yeah. Because they have not stood the test of time and they are new in the market. Right, so why would I entrust my 30, 50-year plan onto someone that is fresh? Right, neither will I take, because manage my debt, definitely can manage me, no. Right, so I think the track record is important, on top of whether your values align. And also at the end, the best thing is I enjoy breakfast with you. Right? If we like to hang out, that's a great place to start, right? Or to end off. Right, but track record is important. I've said this repeatedly on my podcast. Do not give the new people a chance. There will be people out there that will give them. Because new people always need to be given a chance, right? Just not you. Okay? Just not me. I will never give them a chance. There are other things that can be given a chance. Like 𝗙𝗘𝗔𝗗 can give chance. Makan can give chance. Those are fine. New restaurant, new cafe, you go is okay. This is a 30-year plan. Right? I will never give chance. Yes. Yes. Yeah. You can work hard, eventually you get me as a client. Right. That's how I go for lah. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, we have room for 2 more questions. Okay, we have a lady over there.
Good evening, Michelle here. So earlier on, you mentioned about surplus, and when I look at your title, managing your finances well, it brings to me something I observe in the current society: consumerism. We're spending more than what we are saving or earning. Fear of losing out. You only live once. Payment in installments, etc., etc. So I'm not sure whether this trend is only specific to the younger generation or even older generation also. So my question is, if we were to start young, what can teachers or even like parents do for children in school to inculcate this spirit of saving, prudent, managing finances, not in the professional financial advisory capacity?
So I think the best one that I've heard so far, right, is to give your kid a monthly allowance. Right, that's the best one I heard so far, because everyone else is going into the specifics of it, right? How to give, reward them, say yes, put in the piggy bank, 3 piggy bank, all those things, okay, whatever, right? But I think if you want to emulate a salary structure, or you want to emulate how they will eventually live like an adult, right? Then monthly is okay, right? And don't put those kind of like, like I think when we were younger, maybe some parents will have a coin thing at the side, right? Like at the right, and not enough you take, not enough you take. You will never learn to manage, cause not enough you take, right? So that thing needs to go. No more coin holder next to the shoebox. Okay, none of that. Give them a monthly allowance, great, right? And if they fail, great, because fail young, right? Eventually they will learn, and then I think. But okay, let's be clear. When they fail, you don't want your kid to go hungry also, right? So we're not there to traumatize them, right? But we must manage that process. And I think an early childhood expert will be a better person to talk to how to play this thing, to inculcate the ideas into them. But yeah, what the best thing I've heard so far is monthly, to emulate how a general adult will live. Yeah.
I recall the piggy banks I had. Yeah, I had to dig out all the money so I can go mama shop and buy stuff. Yeah. So okay, we have time for one last question. So I think, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that there are things like annuities that are available. In Singapore, has this really taken off well? Because I can say from my own experience, I looked at the market maybe about 10 years ago. I looked at the market again, probably about 5 years ago. What they have is products which has got stuff that I don't want. And because they have stuff that I don't want, I end up paying for it. And it erodes the returns. So is the market ready to give a proper annuity?
So I agree with you. I know what you're saying. Essentially, it wraps many other things, right? And you are being charged the extra wrapping fee because the product that you don't want is the most profitable product, right? So we are in the same camp. I think CPF Life will challenge it because CPF Life is a pure annuity, right? So when CPF Life takes dominance in the market, it's like how Malaysia today is still ILP. Everybody is on an ILP, right? There's no other things, right? Because the market is not being challenged, right? But I think CPF Life, it's only been 10 years, right? And like I said, because there's no profit, no profit interest, it's not well marketed, right? And now CPF, they set up their own marketing comms department in-house. They don't even want to work with us, not so directly, right? So there's the whole thing where we're talking to them, okay? But they are doing what they can, but because it's not well marketed, people don't know. But if that becomes the consensus, pure annuity programs, I believe will come. Because it's a market-based mechanics, right? Everybody just wants to get your money. So if there's a max out within the CPF Life structure, then yeah, the remaining will be served by the private interest. Yeah, so it's just different products for different era, and products will keep improving as the market adds pressure on them, right? So valid point.
So last questions, anybody? If not, all right. Thank you everyone for coming to today's session on financial literacy, and thank you so much, Reggie, for joining us today. So to all of you, both in the auditorium as well as online, feel free to check out the Financial Coconuts podcast on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, a lot more, everywhere.
Yes.
And also do visit the 𝗙 Foundation Dialogues on YouTube and also the 𝗙 Foundation website, where we have a lot of goodies as well in areas of healthcare and education and thought leadership. So feel free, and thank you so much. I hope everyone have a very great evening ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.